Live Fit Podcast, episode 124, Heal Your Drained Brain with Dr. Mike Dow.
Whatever that stress may be for you, and what happens in drained brains is those stress hormones don't go down. So they stay high all day long. And when that happens, that's what I call this drained brain state, where people are just feeling chronically stressed. They're not able to recover easily, and it leads to these not only these mental health conditions like anxiety disorders, insomnia, but also physical health. We do want some stress hormones, right? So it's sort of, I compare our stress hormones to Goldilocks, right? You don't want them too high, you don't want them too low, you want them just right.
Welcome to the Live Fit Podcast with Glenn Johnson, your resource for all things that contribute to good health. You will hear expert advice and interviews with leading authorities on fitness, food, fat loss, mindset, and the mind-body connection. You will find show notes, articles, and health programs at livefitpodcast.com.
Yes. It is time once again for the Live Fit Podcast. I'm your host, Glenn Johnson, your guide to better health. At the beginning tag of this show, you heard my daughter, Astrid. You've probably heard her a few times over the years, along with her brother, Anders. Well, in just a few days, Astrid is going to turn 13. That's right, lucky 13. On April Fool's Day, also Easter of this year, she turns into an adolescent teenager. But I still think of her as my little key fob. So happy birthday, sweetie. I love you. You are awesome. Today's guest is Dr. Mike Dow. He's going to talk to us about hormones. Oh, hey. Good timing. Hormones control our metabolism, our weight, our mood, our minds, all kinds of things in our bodies. And Dr. Mike Dow is a highly sought-after psychotherapist and neurotherapist. He's a New York Times best-selling author of Heal Your Drained Brain, Healing the Broken Brain, The Brain Fog Fix, and Diet Rehab. He's also hosted several television series and served as a go-to expert in relationships, brain health, addiction, and mental illness. I think we're in good hands. His latest book, Heal Your Drained Brain, Naturally Relieve Anxiety, Combat Insomnia, and Balance Your Brain in just 14 days, offers a 2-week plan designed to help naturally boost brain health. Whew, I think we're going to learn a few things today. Buckle up, here we go. Welcome, Mike. Hi, Mike, how are you doing today?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I am doing really, really well. Thank you very much for being on the show. The brain is certainly a fascinating topic. I minored in psychology. I work with people all the time, and ultimately what trips them up in being the best selves they can be, the healthiest people they can be, is essentially their brain. Now, of course, there are some accidents and, genetic issues, but most of the people that I come in contact with could be better at their health or whatever they're trying to achieve if something that's, in their brain pan wasn't getting in their way. And it seems to me like a lot of what you've been talking about has to deal with that. Can you explain a little bit?
Yeah, so, I think in our modern world, there is so much going on that drains our modern brains. Like the stress of the dog barking,
Yeah.
my dog barking at me when I'm trying to do a radio interview. He just saw a squirrel outside the window, which happens once in a while. And what happens in a normal brain when we encounter that stress, and if it was, let's say, an animal coming at us, and let's say it was a lion, we have these brain draining stress hormones, right? So I call them your brain drainers. So first, there are two that come on first. That's adrenaline and norepinephrine. And then after that, you get a burst of cortisol. So those are your 3 brain drainers. Now, in normal brains, you would be you would see this animal, or in modern lives, the spreadsheet is due to your boss in an hour, or somebody sent you a text that's distressing to you or is upsetting to you in some way, or you're thinking about all the things you have to do before 5 o'clock, or, the dogs you have to walk, or, whatever that stress may be for you. And what happens in drained brains is those stress hormones don't go down. So they stay high all day long. And when that happens, that's what I call this drained brain state, where people are just feeling chronically stressed. They're not able to recover easily. And it leads to these, not only these mental health conditions like anxiety disorders, insomnia, but also physical health. I think one of the shocking stats in my book is that, if you are drained and anxious, you are 4 times more likely to develop hypertension or high blood pressure, and that is the leading cause of preventable death in the world. So it's not just uncomfortable, but if you don't do anything about it, it may even kill you. So, that's just not to be doom and gloom. It's just a matter of saying, let's do something about this, because it's good for your brain and it's also good for your body.
A lot of people hold stress almost like a badge of courage or honor, that, I am so stressed. I've got blah, 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 all these different things I'm doing. Oh, maybe you should take yoga. No, I can handle it. I got it. I'm fine. That sort of attitude. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. People do it with stress, and they also do it with sleep for some reason.
Oh,
say,
yes.
Oh, I only slept 4 hours last night. I'm fine. I don't need it.
Which leads to chronic stress, too.
Exactly. And, you look at these other cultures where, they love that siesta, and, not American. We take pride in the fact that we work longer and we don't take our vacation days and we don't rest our bodies. And we know that this has a profound impact in draining our brains. When we sleep, it doesn't matter if you feel fine, because when you are sleeping, your neurons expand so that all that gunk, first of all, your brain is encoding memories, moving memories so that you can remember them. It's your subconscious is processing and chewing on some of the curd. But I think as it relates to long-term health, your neurons expand so that all the gunk that form plaques that eventually cause dementia are sort of hosed down. It's sort of your brain's wash cycle. And this happens most efficiently when you're asleep. So if you're sleeping less, more of that gunk starts to build up. And certainly we know that dementia is not something that anybody wants to be diagnosed with. So, I think we need to really start rethinking our pride and stress and anxiety and insomnia, and really start taking better care of ourselves, because more and more people are becoming stressed. And by the way, anxiety disorder is by far the most common mental health disorder. So, it's twice as common as depression. So more and more people are being faced with it.
I do talk with a lot of people that have anxiety, and most of the time it's just one of those things like, it rains in the Pacific Northwest that they've become accustomed to. They deal with it maybe somewhat effectively. But yeah, I agree with you that there does seem to be a lot of anxiety, and you address that in your book, and you say that anxiety can be a good thing.
Anxiety can be, we do want some stress hormones, right? So it's sort of, I compare our stress hormones to Goldilocks, right? You don't want them too high, you don't want them too low, you want them just right. And it's also really interesting, in the news we see a lot of people who are survivors of trauma these days. And what's really interesting is, I have these subtypes of, I talked about those 3 brain drainers going high. Well, what's also interesting is that sometimes there are different subtypes of drained brains. Now, in most drained brains, the brain drainers, those 3 stress hormones, go high and stay high. Sometimes they shoot up. I call that skyrocket drain. Sometimes they have a blunted response, meaning they start to rise, but then if you look at it on a graph, I have this. A very visual graph in the book. It's like they fall off a cliff, And when that happens, you don't have the energy to get through the crisis, right? Because
Right.
you do want those stress hormones because they do help you to move through a crisis. And then what happens in post-traumatic stress disorder, this is really interesting. Your adrenaline and norepinephrine go high, but your cortisol stays low, which creates this wired but tired sort of feeling. So the adrenaline is making your heart race, but because the cortisol goes low, you also feel tired all the time. So again, you really do want enough of these stress hormones, because in moderation, when they go up just right to the way nature intends them to go up, they do help you. For example, every morning when you wake up, your cortisol should naturally spike just a little bit, because that helps you to wake up. Right, so you do want a little bit of a stress hormone response, but you don't want them too high. You don't want them to fall off a cliff, and you don't want, in the case of untreated post-traumatic stress, you don't want the cortisol to just stay low all day either.
And not to mention that the stress response is a good thing. For one, it gets us out of dangerous situations. Another, it helps us perform better. You have a speech coming up, or you have a paper you're writing, or whatever you might be doing, you want to be at your peak. Athletes know this. I used to race bicycles, and I paid attention to where my stress was, and I could intentionally raise it or lower it depending on where I was. I wanted it high enough at the beginning of the race that I could get a good start, but not so high that I would peak early and be drained by the finish time when I needed it most.
Yeah, that's so fascinating, and I think probably all of your listeners can think back to a time when they had to slam on the brakes in their car, or they almost got hit by a baseball being thrown, and that almost hit their face. And it's interesting, and we can thank those stress hormones, the ones that surge immediately, which are adrenaline and norepinephrine. Adrenaline primarily responsible for the things that change in your body. Norepinephrine sharpening the mind and the brain. Mm-hmm. And because of those two stress hormones, you don't have to think. You just act, and you act very, very quickly. You don't have time to think, oh, should I press the brakes with my foot? You just do it.
Right.
And if you're an athlete, sort of the same thing. You just act very, very quickly in a millisecond. So I think it is sort of interesting, as athletes and as, people in the modern world, there are these times when these stress hormones have kept us safe as well.
How did you get into all this?
I am really fascinated by the power of the human brain, and also holistic solutions. So, when my little brother was 10 years old, he had a massive stroke, which was the result of what we found out to be a very rare brain disease. And, doctors told us that, I remember one doctor told our family that, the stroke was so massive. I mean, he was completely paralyzed on one side, couldn't talk, couldn't walk, couldn't feed himself. We should just put him in a nursing home for the rest of his life and just call it a day. Well, today, my brother walks and talks and drives and lives an independent life. He's not in a nursing home.
Wow.
And I can tell you that it was the power of the human brain. One of the first things, my father, I was in high school at the time. My father was a physician, and he put him my brother on a very high dose of fish oils. Well, fish oils is one of the things I recommend in all my books. I recommended it in the Brain Fog Fix. I recommended it in my book for stroke recovery, Healing the Broken Brain. I recommend it in this book. In fact, in this book, Heal Your Drained Brain, the two forms of omega-3s, they do two things as they relate to stress and insomnia. So I call EPA your stress-less omega-3. We know that at a dose of about 2,000 milligrams of EPA, you can reduce anxiety by about 20%, and you reduce inflammation in the brain and the body. And then we also know that the other form of usable omega-3, DHA, you can significantly reduce insomnia, and you can sleep more soundly. And then, of course, if you're consuming a vegetarian form of omega-3 like walnuts, you're going to be getting ALAs, which your body converts into those two usable forms. It converts it more to EPA than DHA. So you're going to be getting more of that stress-less omega-3. But what I saw, it wasn't just the omega-3. It was the combination of thousands of hours of therapy, omega-3s, and all of these strategies that helped my brother's brain to rewire and grow. And the same thing is true, when I'm treating somebody, for example, who has a phobia, and I'm using a traditional exposure therapy, I'm essentially doing the same thing that my brother did, because by challenging them, if somebody is afraid of a snake, all I do is in baby steps, I have them think of a snake, I teach them some breathing techniques, and then I'll show them a picture of a snake, and then I may bring in a snake in a cage. Well, I'm just providing them the experiences that are helping their brain to rewire and learn, so they can learn to extinguish that fear and that anxiety, right? Mm-hmm. So I know that there are so many ways for all of us to change our brain. So whether it's stress and whether it's changing and reframing the way we think about things, people who are anxious and stressed out, we tend to, and by the way, I don't know about you, but I'm a perfectionist. I'm a type A personality, and we type A personalities, we tend to cluster. We have blessings and curses. Mm-hmm. We're blessed with, we tend to get lots of, we're straight A students, but we also tend to suffer from mental illnesses like OCD, like anorexia, all of these illnesses and mental illnesses and disorders where you see this perfectionistic sort of polarized thinking where you think in patterns like, if I'm not a complete success, I'm a complete failure, right? So you see these stories of Ivy League students where they get a B+ and they kill themselves, right? That's a perfectionistic thought that was unchallenged and it ended up killing somebody. Or you look at a thought, another thought that I challenge in cognitive behavioral therapy, paralysis analysis, which is another name for, that ruminate, when you start to ruminate and chew and you can't stop thinking about something. That happens a lot with anxiety. So, but the good news is we can change these thoughts, right? So if you're obsessive or you're perfectionistic or you're anxious or you're stressed, there are so many ways that we can learn to let those thoughts go, through mindfulness, through cognitive behavioral therapy, through what we eat and how we move our bodies, through exercise, through pranayama or breathing techniques that I have in my book. There's all these holistic, natural ways that we can sort of take who we are and, the way we're wired. My father was a surgeon and definitely had mild OCD. There were a lot, he liked to sterilize things in our house. Looking back, I see how, his OCD made him a great surgeon and a little bit strict around our house.
Right.
And you can see how we all have a story like that in our lives. So.
Right, and that, like you said, the OCD is what made him a great surgeon. And I've met people of many different professions, and in a certain setting they're great, but then you wonder what they're like at home. Like Tony Robbins, for example. What's it like to live with him?
Yeah.
I think he's a great guy. He's a big inspiration for me. I've studied him a lot in that context, but what's he like to live with?
Right. What happens when you have a bad day and Tony Robbins is your best friend or your dad?
Yeah.
Get off the couch, and you're like, but I just want to lie on the couch today.
I just want to be lazy, please. Just let me watch Netflix all day.
Yeah, exactly. Just one day of my life.
Mike, you have a lot of books, and you've been studying the brain for a while, and you shared your experience with your brother, which was really moving, and it's fantastic that he's come around. Your latest book is the one that I read. It's called Heal Your Drained Brain, and I think it's fantastic. Can you give an idea for the listeners, kind of a summary of what the book is about?
Yeah, so in this book, these are the natural remedies for stress, anxiety, exhaustion, and insomnia. So this book delivers a 14-day plan that puts all of the natural, clinically effective strategies together. So, you're going to be undergoing cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, energy-based cognitive therapy, putting together you're going to be learning a toolkit of practices that help to shift your nervous system from sympathetic to parasympathetic nervous system, which is, moving from fight or flight into that restful rest and digest response. So practices like autogenic training, progressive muscle relaxation, self-hypnosis, mindfulness meditation, mantra meditation, and then putting it together with nutritional strategies, eating an omega-3 superfood every day and learning what those omega-3 superfoods are, eating a probiotic every day and learning why and how probiotics actually manufacture these same brain balancers, for example, GABA and serotonin, these same chemicals that a lot of people try to get from Xanax and Prozac, respectively. So I think it's really interesting when people have this information. I've had really smart producers lately. They said, "Really, probiotics manufacture GABA, the same stuff that Xanax and Klonopin are releasing?" I said, "Yeah, there's a strain that actually produces GABA. Which is why in the book I not only tell you in the program to eat a probiotic food daily, and by the way, a prebiotic, which is the food in your gut for the gut bacteria, but I also give you recipes in the book so you can make your own kombucha and ferment your own vegetables, which have probiotics and good bacteria in them. So I really give you a plan, and this is all to help balance your brain, which essentially is decreasing the brain drainers, so less stress hormones, and increasing the brain balancers, so more GABA, more serotonin, more acetylcholine, more melatonin, more endorphins. So essentially you feel less stressed and you sleep more soundly.
Now, most people are pretty comfortable with the way they are. They may feel like they're not at their best, but it was a gradual process that drifted them away from their ultimate self to wherever they are now. So they don't really see that comparison. How can somebody know if their brain is drained and they need to spend a little attention and follow your steps in your book to rectify it?
Yeah, well, I start off the book with a really simple 20-question quiz, so you can see just how brain drained you are. But you don't really have to take a quiz to know. I could ask one question right here and now. And the question is, are you feeling more drained than you used to? And most people, this is not some condition where, we're going to take by the way, I talk about a way to measure. There's a really simple way for about $100 you can measure your cortisol levels through saliva, which, some people, really do find that interesting and would like to measure. Mm-hmm. But, in terms of feeling drained, people know it. This is not going to be a hidden, like when people somehow find out they're low in, I just got my, levels checked and I'm low in vitamin B12 and wow, that's shocking. When people are drained, when people are stressed, you tend to feel these stress hormones. So chances are, you're not going to be surprised. People who have very high scores on my brain drain quiz, they already know that they're really stressed out and not sleeping well. So if you know that you're feeling drained and you used to be a person who used to let things roll off your back, and then whether you're genetically wired for it or whether something happened in your life recently, whether you lost somebody, you went through a huge transition, you're having financial or legal problems, all of these things. We know that these things really do drain the brain. So if you're in that category, then maybe you are somebody who needs to take up this 14-day program to really get your brain back into balance. And there are, the good news is there are natural ways to do this. And by the way, and it works synergistically. I am not militant. I do believe that there are some people who do need a certain amount of prescription medication. And the good news is all the strategies in this book work synergistically. So, for example, if you eat more omega-3 superfoods, a high omega-3 diet tends to help SSRIs or antidepressants work even better. So, I'm not a militant. Don't ever take a prescription for anything. I'm not of that belief because I've treated enough people with very severe mental illness that even if they do everything I say, they're still going to need a little prescription medication. But the good news is most people will need only these natural strategies. And for some people, you'll use a little medication and will add these natural strategies, which is great news as well.
Nice. You said that omega-3s help with insomnia. Does it matter when they're taken? Should you take fish oil in the morning or the evening, or no difference?
Fish oils can help improve sleep either. We know that people who have high levels of omega-3s, and especially that omega-3 DHA, are going to improve your sleep generally. So if you're eating a high omega-3 diet all day long, whether you supplement in the morning or the evening, I tend to like, especially if you're somebody who notices any type of fishy after burp.
Right.
I tend to like to take my fish oils at night, because if you take them right before bed, you're going to be sleeping and you're not going to notice it. So I tend to like to take my omega-3s before bed. The other thing that we notice, and this is sort of recent research, that people who spike their blood sugar, sugar, by the way, literally shrinks your brain. Sugar drains your brain, it shrinks your brain. We know that people who go through chronic stress, in studies, MRI studies recently from Yale, you're shrinking your prefrontal cortex, so that's the part of your brain right behind your forehead. That's the most advanced human part of your brain. We know that sugar and other blood sugar spiking foods like flour, you're shrinking your hippocampus. So sugar is terrible for you. And we also know that as it relates to sleep, people who are spiking their blood sugar the most, it pulls you out of deep, restful sleep at night. So you really want to have in my program, you actually don't need any sugar or flour at all. But the good news is I tell you a lot of simple swaps and switches, like, there's this bean pasta that I love, and the spaghetti noodles or the penne noodles. There's only one ingredient in the pasta, and it's made completely out of just organic beans, and it tastes delicious. So you're going to swap pasta for this bean pasta, and you're going to get a spiralizer and make a zucchini pasta, which I make about once a week. And you're going to learn these swaps and switches that are going to help to restore the balance. And by the way, a lot of the amino acid in your diet, your body takes. If you eat a lot of fruits and vegetables, by the way, things like vitamin B6, B12, folate. Your body, those vitamins and minerals, they help your body to take the amino acids from your diet and then manufacture them and turn them into serotonin and GABA, right? But if you don't get enough of those vitamins and minerals, your body can't make that conversion, right? So the tryptophan doesn't become 5-HTP and doesn't become serotonin, which, by the way, is then converted into melatonin. If you don't have enough vitamin C and vitamin B6, vitamin B12, folate, your body struggles with that conversion. So isn't it interesting that by, instead of the sugar, eating more broccoli and spinach and carrots and all these other healthy foods, you're getting all of these cofactors, these vitamins and minerals that help your body manufacture these brain balancers like GABA and serotonin, which I think is just fascinating.
There's a lot of information here, and this is certainly pretty hard to digest by listening. So I certainly recommend reading the book. Yet the underlying message here is to eat healthy whole foods, mostly vegetables and fruits, I presume. And you said sugar shrinks your brain. Is that going to include fruit?
I recommend I do not. Fruit juice is off the table, right. But whole fruit is definitely part of my program. We know that in terms of the brain, fruits, berries especially, are some of the best neuroprotective. In terms of fruits and vegetables, berries are fantastic. I also have a list of which fruits and vegetables are the most important to buy organic, in terms of which have the most pesticides. So
yes,
I think
saw
that
that
list in the book is really important.
That's very helpful.
Just a lot of these user-friendly guides that people just need access to. I just wanted people to have them at their fingertips. So whole fruits are fantastic. When you eat whole fruits, you're getting the fiber, you're getting, by the way, even some fruits, for example, pineapple. Okay, so there are some, once in a while you're going to have a bite of a whole fruit that doesn't have a ton of fiber. But, if having one piece of pineapple and getting some of that vitamin C, which is a cofactor, we don't see people eating whole fruit having problems with blood sugar spikes and weight because they're also eating other vegetables, healthy oils, which help mitigate blood sugar spikes, right? It's the people who are drinking fruit juice, soda, flour, sugar, all these unhealthy ways that people spike blood sugar that become problematic, and drain the brain, shrink your brain, prevent restful deep sleep from occurring at night. So I think it's really interesting when people find out what is happening to the brain, they're more willing to make the changes.
You just mentioned pretty much the standard American diet, or as Dr. Furman says, the deadly American diet. Let's say a sweet coffee drink and a scone.
Right, exactly.
I did a sugar series back in the 90s. My episode numbers in the 90s. I had several episodes from experts speaking about sugar, and this might be, kind of like a sub part of that series right there, because I think what you're saying is really important. And sugar, a lot of people know that sugar's not good for them. It causes cavities. It could cause weight gain if you have too much of it. It could cause diabetes maybe, but that's unsubstantiated. And here we are with one more reason that sugar is really not a good food for humans to consume. And by sugar, I also mean those simpler forms of complex carbs like the white flour, white rice, etc.
That's right. And, I think, a research study that just has come out in just about, I think it was about a year ago exactly. We now know in all my books, I've recommended a Mediterranean or a modified Mediterranean diet, whether you're vegan, there's a way to do a Mediterranean diet or something close to it. We've always thought that it, is a great preventative agent, but there was a human study that found that even in people with major depressive disorder, it worked as a treatment of depression, which tells us that the Mediterranean diet is far more potent at not only preventing disorders in the mind, but even is so powerful that it can treat severe mental illness, which is to me just mind-blowing, and just give even more power to this Mediterranean diet. So, these omega-3 superfoods, olive oil, fish, beans, leafy greens, nuts, all of these healthy foods that, I make a part of my everyday diet, and it's such a great way to eat. And it's not the no-fat, terrible diet of the 90s that Americans had to eat that was just devoid of any richness. The Mediterranean diet is actually quite rich with all of the healthy fats and avocados and nuts and oils. Mm-hmm. It's not a low-calorie diet. There's a lot of delicious foods in there. So, I think it's really great news for people.
I love it. I love all those foods. They're fantastic. Mike, this has been really eye-opening. You have a wealth of knowledge. Your book is fantastic. It's called Heal Your Drained Brain, I got a little bit befuddled there. Naturally relieve anxiety, combat insomnia, and balance your brain in just 14 days. That sounds like an amazingly quick amount of time. Is that really possible?
It really is. A lot of these strategies in the toolbox, they actually work instantly. So, the progressive muscle relaxation, the mantra meditation, the exercise, the breathing practices, and then you put them together with the cognitive behavioral therapy, for insomnia. Some people find that they feel different in 3 days, and I found that some people at the end of 14 days they're cutting their brain drain quiz scores in half. So it's really quite impressive what people can do in terms of reducing their brain drain.
That's amazing. I guess it just goes to show you just take a little effort in the right direction and things actually happen.
That's right. Absolutely.
All right, Mike, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. I encourage everybody to go out and read that book. And it's all for a greater good, healthy brain and body.
That's right. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Live Fit Podcast. Please subscribe and share with someone you care about. Read show notes, articles, resources, and learn more about our weight management programs at livefitpodcast.com. Once again, thanks for listening, and always remember to live fit.